my name is Deb, and this is my furry sidekick, Kylie, and we're here today to take you to the carnival. Kylie's all dressed up and ready to check out some carnivals, though I'm not entirely sure the carnivals we're about to talk about are the ones we really should be visiting. So let's get into it. This month is, of course, the Black Cat Carnival edition of Escape the Readathon from Lexi at Books with Lexi, and that put me in the mindset to definitely pick up some carnival themed books. I figured this would be a really fun theme to work on this month. Kylie got some fun extra accessories for the event, and I'm looking forward to it. She's looking forward to a nap. So let's let the puppy have some sleep while I talk to you about the books on my TBR for this particular vlog. Alright, so I have 4 books on this particular TBR, starting with the one that's been on my shelf the longest. I've got Sallow Bend. This is by Alan Baxter. This is set in a small town, which is called Sallow Bend, and the carnival has just come to town. At the same time, 2 girls go missing and things get weird. That's really all I know about it. The synopsis is very vague. Apparently there's one man who can kind of see through what's happening or knows more about what's happening than the rest of the town, and he knows there's danger going on. So I'll see what this one's all about. I think I'm actually going to start with this one. Next up, I have Full Tilt by Neal Shusterman. This is an author I've read before, but I don't know a ton about this particular book. I think it follows siblings, and one's a little more of a thrill seeker than the other, and one winds up chasing their brother, I believe, into a phantom carnival of some sort, one that doesn't let the customers leave. So definitely intrigued by the spookiness of this particular carnival. And then I have The Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson, and this one says it's the account of a tragedy that occurred at the reopening of Bonkin's Bonanza one day in the summer of 1989. So I think it'll be fun. I think it'll have 80s vibes, which I really like in horror sometimes, and looking forward to this one. I do know there's also a sequel for this one, so we'll see. Maybe I'll pick that one up if I wind up loving this one. And the final book that I have is from KU, and it's Tastes Like Candy by Ivy Tholen, and this one follows a group of girls. They break into a carnival after hours for a scavenger hunt, and things go from there. I'm very vague on most of these synopses, but really the carnival vibes are what's pulling me in. I don't want to know too much going into them, so I will be back once I have some carnival-y thoughts. I did indeed start with Sallow Bend for my carnival reading, and this is a special edition that I got from Twisted Retreat. It definitely has, if I can get it to focus a bit, some carnival vibes on the sprayed edges and some creepiness definitely under the cover as well. And I'm about 40% into this one currently. Lots of shiny on this one. Initial impressions for this one are pretty mixed so far. I don't want to say too much about the plot because the synopsis for this is very vague, and I think that worked really well for this. I went in and there were some surprises already that I didn't predict from the synopsis, so I do like that about it. There's a history of missing children happening in this town. Very early on in the book, we get a story from one of the characters who's looking for some missing girls, giving a story that their grandfather told about when they went searching for missing children back in their day. And it seems like it's a pattern for this particular town. Some come back, some don't. And one of our main characters definitely sees the world a little bit differently. He says he's been tested, he's not autistic, but he has some sort of hypersensitivity to facial tics and micro gestures and things like that. So he can tell when people are lying. He can read what their intentions are and things like that that are going on. There's another character in here who was labeled by some people as autistic, so I found that interesting. I'm not sure how exactly I feel about how it's being handled. I tried to look and see if there were any Own Voices reviews, and I didn't really find any that said they were, so it sounds like the author actually works with autistic people, so that may be some of the motivation behind kind of making some of those distinctions in here. But it does seem like there's a bit of a play on the fact that people with autism or similar traits to someone with autism have just a different outlook on life, and that's being played upon in this book. And maybe they can kind of see through some of the things other people can't. The other thing that kind of I found off-putting is at the carnival, one of the men, who is meant to be not a good guy, but he has a whole display of something that is related to the Holocaust as a macabre feature to the carnival. And initially, one of our main characters was kind of interested in finding this out, and I found that really off-putting. By the end, both of our main characters who were there were definitely denouncing it and saying, well, that's not good. It just was like an odd inclusion to me. I think there could have been different ways to go with that. So from that standpoint, that didn't impress me super much. But the general spookiness of the book, I'm very intrigued to see where we're going to end up with this one. It's definitely a slow burn. It's not anything big and splashy happening, but things are starting to go down. We've got some deaths, we've got some gore, and definitely intrigue as to what this story is going to wind up doing. So I'll let you know once I finish it, and I'm hoping to maybe even be able to binge the rest of it today. I did indeed binge through the rest of Sallow Bend this afternoon, and overall, I had a pretty good time with it. I can't say it's a new favorite. I can't say I was fully hooked into it, but obviously I was able to read the whole thing in one day, so that is a fairly good sign. Like, it kept my attention well enough, and it had some good moments. It had some spooky moments. I think it took a couple turns I didn't entirely predict. It took some other ones that I definitely did. I liked the way it wrapped up at the end. I think overall it lived up to what I was hoping for it. I was a little worried with this one that the carnival wouldn't be central to it, and I think it did come into play quite a bit in it, so it worked well to kick off this vlog in particular. I think potentially it was trying to do a lot. I think it was trying to tackle quite a few things and quite a few stigmas, and there was female rage in here. There was different representation of the different carnival folk. There were people with special abilities, people who doubted those abilities. There just were a lot of conversations going on, and I think to some extent some of that lost my attention here and there. But in the end, I gave this one a 3.5. It was on the lower end of a 3.5, but not mad that I picked this one up, and it definitely keeps me intrigued to read more Carnival Horror in the very near future. Okay, I've moved on to my second Carnival book, which is Full Tilt by Neal Shusterman. I flew through the first half of this. I looked down and thought, oh, I might be a quarter of the way through. Nope, I was past the halfway point. So, thought I'd better hurry up and get you my initial thoughts. This is a fun read. It was definitely a little bit different than I thought going into it. So we're following 16-year-old Blake, and he's the responsible one in the family. He's getting ready to go off to school potentially. His younger brother Quinn is a thrill seeker. He wants to enjoy life, and the home situation isn't perfect. Their mom's getting remarried, I believe, and what happens is Blake gets an invitation to a special carnival. Quinn wants to go more than Blake. One night, out of the blue, Quinn collapses at home, and seems to be in a coma or something like that. But Blake has an inkling that Quinn has gone to this festival. He sees something in his eyes that reminds him of a carnival, and he goes to this carnival to investigate with some friends. And it isn't a normal carnival. They have to get through a certain number of rides before they can leave, but can they really leave? Is that even an option? It seems a little bit ominous. So far I'm having a good time with it. There's definitely commentary on mental health and self-worth and self-image going on in this one. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what direction it goes in. Okay, I did indeed finish Full Tilt last night, and this was a good time. I think it definitely reads on the younger end of things. There were a few things that I think could have used more depth for sure, but I really liked the way it was set up, with the main character having to go through a series of essentially trials in the form of different rides that all had a little bit of a twist on a familiar carnival type ride. I think that was really well done and creative, and it made for just a really fun read and definitely suited the theme of the carnival vlog. So I gave this one a 4 in the end. I think this had a lot of really good conversations about mental health, about trauma, about memory and relationships and self-identity, and just all sorts of things came up in here, which is a lot for such a short book and such a quick read. The text in here is in fact pretty large as well, so it made it really easy to get through, and it held my interest throughout. So this is an author I would look to read more from in the future. I've enjoyed his books in the past, and I'm glad this is another one that I had fun with. I'm here with my initial thoughts on the Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson, and this one hasn't managed to hook me quite yet. I'm about at the halfway point, and we've been getting mostly set up to this point. So I'm hopeful still that the second half will hook me in a little bit better. The premise of this one is that years ago, a brutal murder happened with a cotton candy machine involved at this festival. It's the Wonkins Bonanza, and it got shut down. In the present day, we're getting the reopening of this particular festival. It's been a bit of urban legend. It's been a story that gets passed around a lot, and the people who are reopening the festival are really looking to capitalize on this brutal history, knowing that people like the macabre. We're following primarily teenagers. We get a couple of perspectives that are more tied to the carnival, but our main characters are teenagers who either work at the festival or visiting the festival, and the way that they get drawn into things. Initially, I do have concerns about some of the language that we're getting. One of the main characters is plus sized. Her self-identity is really tied up in that, and she has some obvious eating disorder issues as well. And this is definitely one that would be triggering if you have some of those issues as well. I think a lot of the language that we're getting from her father, from her own thoughts in her head, are really disparaging and repetitive in terms of looking at her weight. We also have a father who's apparently been leering at her and looking at her body in other ways that are inappropriate, and there's a lot going on with that. Obviously, this is a type of book that is going to come with trigger warnings, especially violence, gore, those types of things. We've already seen some of that at the first half, and I think that's going to ramp up in the second half. And it does mention that there are these things going on in the book. So I expect things to ramp up in the back half of this book, and I will certainly let you know my final thoughts. I have my final thoughts on the Cotton Candy Massacre. I think this comes under the category of this book really just wasn't quite for me. I think it did a lot of things well. The slasher aspect of it, the way it utilized the carnival setting was really well done. I thought there was a lot of creativity in terms of the kills and the way that tied back to it being a carnival setting and the cotton candy, and all of that was really well done. What didn't work for me was the ongoing talk about weight. I didn't feel like that added to the humor or to the horror. I think also the sex for me in here was just not to my personal taste. It was there for, I think, shock value. There were inappropriate relationships. I felt like a lot of times it was being intentionally crude, intentionally problematic in some of the relationships and the way they talk to each other. And I think just for me, it's just not an element that I'm looking for in my horror, and it didn't detract from the book as a whole too much in my mind. I'm not rating it way down because of that, but I think some of the relationships were just not fully developed. I think that maybe is something that I shouldn't be looking for in this type of book necessarily, but overall, it was a really easy read. It was easy to binge. The audiobook for this one, not my favorite. You're dealing with a lot of teenagers and kids, and the audio voice grated on my nerves a few times, I will admit. But overall, I'm giving this one a 3, and still a good time. Definitely fit the carnival theme and carnival horror that I was looking for. I'm here to bring you some midway thoughts on Taste Like Candy, and so far they're pretty positive. I'm at 35%. I've been reading it a little bit start and stops because it's been a busy day. As I'm filming this, it's actually Mother's Day, so I've been out and about a little bit, but I'm looking forward this afternoon to just sitting down, settling in, and reading. We're following a group of teenage girls, and they're about to go into their senior year. The scavenger hunt is like a sought after invitation to get included in this. And this year it's going to be a little bit different because they're sneaking into a carnival after hours for their scavenger hunt. And so far we've been getting set up. Again, I'm only about a third of the way in, so that's reasonable for me, and things I think are about to start happening. The kids are about to be at the carnival. They're taking some drugs, which probably is going to prove to be a problem, I'm guessing, from the way it's been set up. And I think it's going to get a little bit crazy from here. The setup of it gets a little bit repetitive. The main character that we're following, she hasn't received her college acceptance yet. She's really nervous because she's only applied to one school. And so we've been hearing a lot about that, which I think makes sense for the age range and for her level of anxiety going into this. But I'm looking forward to hopefully switching gears a little bit and getting so caught up in the action that that stuff falls away a little bit. So I will let you know once I get further into it what my final thoughts are. All right, I am back to bring final thoughts on Taste Like Candy, and this was a really fun time. It was a fun one to finish this vlog off on with the carnival vibes. This one falls a little bit more into, I would say, the slasher category. There were creative kills using the carnival again, which I really appreciated. The way the setting really played a big role in it as well. And I think a lot of the things in the beginning, the setup, the kind of teenage drama of getting into school and what that means really played into the story as a whole in a bigger way than I expected. So I really enjoyed that as well. So this one in the end got a 4-star for me. I wouldn't say it blew me away. I don't think it's the best book ever, but I had a really good time with it, which was what I was hoping for going into it. So I definitely would recommend picking this one up if you enjoy a good slasher horror. So with that, that wraps up this vlog. The carnival that was supposed to be a couple doors down from me this month to kind of give me an immersive experience of my carnival reading didn't wind up going forward. They had to cancel it because people can be horrible and there were threats against it apparently, and they decided for safety's sake to go ahead and shut it down. So that was unfortunate, but I did decide instead to watch Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is a old favorite and definitely suits the creepy carnival vibes. So that was a fun substitution to get a little bit of extra carnival-y-ness. I'm gonna make that a word, even though clearly it's not. So that was a lot of fun as well. And Kylie and I enjoyed sitting back and taking a little bit of a reading break in the midst of a very chaotic reading month with Escape the Readathon. Figured I'd do a little bit of a ranking of what my favorites were. Unfortunately, Cotton Candy Massacre wound up being just kind of the not the book for me category. It just didn't quite suit my taste, but plenty of people really loved this, really loved the sequel too, so definitely check out more reviews for this. Sallow Bend fell somewhere in the middle range. It was okay. I had some issues with it, which I talked to you about, and it was fine. It was an entertaining time for the most part, but not one that, now that it's been over a week since I read it, that's really stuck in my memory. Tastes Like Candy was one of my favorites from this vlog, and I went into it expecting silly fun, and that's exactly what it delivered. I think it had some creepy moments, it had some weird moments, it had some gore, some just over-the-topness to it, and that's exactly what I wanted and what I got. And then I think my favorite actually wound up being Full Tilt by Neal Shusterman. This one had both the silly fun elements and also some deeper topics and some depth to it, which I think maybe sometimes I'm in the mood for with my horror. I liked the trials aspect, the way the different rides were constructed, and just the creativity in that, in working within this kind of phantom carnival element of the story. So with that, I've got a Jester Kylee here to help me say thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you spending some carnival reading time with me, and would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button below, subscribe if you're interested in more of our content, and leave me a comment below. Do you have any favorite carnival setting books? Do you have any favorite thrillers that kind of have that carnival vibe to them? I would appreciate all the recommendations. I know there's a lot more out there that I would love to get to. And if you've made it to this point and you don't have a book to recommend or a comment to leave, maybe just leave me an emoji that reminds you of a carnival. But for now, that's it from us. Thank you again, and we'll catch you in the next video.